Welcome to the Baka Gaijin Show! The Baka Gaijin Show is a one-man mini-podcast done by myself, Zeke, Freek, and is also by and large a series of opinion pieces. The views expressed are indicative of no one other than myself. All rants are unscripted, so I may say stupid shit I'll regret later. Thank you for your continued understanding.
Welcome to the Baka Gaijin Show. I actually had another topic that I wanted to talk about today, but once again I'm going to push that off to a later date, and instead talk about Sword Art Online. Or rather, the concept of hatedoms and hate-watching and things of that nature. Now, there's been a lot of series over the years that have been incredibly divisive within the anime community, and personally I believe Sword Art Online to be the apex of, or the epitome of just how divided a fandom can be over something. You have people who think it's the worst thing ever made, and you have people thinking it's the greatest thing, that it's this fucking Citizen Kane of anime. But, okay, I'm sure no one's ever said that, but there are people who believe it's truly a great thing. There seem to be very few people like me who see both its merits and its faults. And this is what I hate about hatedoms in general, is that it gets to the point where the hate for something, the hatred becomes so mimetic that it just spreads around to people who haven't even seen it. There are so many people who hate on SAO who've never even seen a single episode, and whose knowledge of the show does not go beyond its basic premise and maybe the main character's name. And that's kind of fucking sad. And what's really sad is that's not even the most extreme example of this. You know, you want an extreme example of an anime that people hate based on its name alone. Look at fucking School Days. An anime that a lot of people don't really see the merits of, but there are people like me, critical human beings, who do. Or just people who play the visual novel, either or. And I'm not going to go into detail about my own thoughts on these shows unless I get everything else out of the way really quickly and I need to fill the episode. So, look forward to that. But this is more about how insidious hatedoms can get, to the point where people who have never even experienced something can just so vehemently hate it. And it just pisses me off, because people should be allowed to form their own opinions. You know, people should be allowed to see something and with a critical eye and develop their own view. And I feel like this kind of widespread hatedom goes against that, because people are starting to hate things basically just because they've been told to. And that is not right. Now, I realize that not everyone has time to watch every anime in the world. I realize that I'm kind of a rarity, and that I watch so much anime, and I play so many games and whatnot, you know, and I experience so much media. I realize I'm kind of an anomaly in that department, and not everyone has time to do that and be critical about it. But I feel like if you're never gonna watch something, or you're never gonna play something, or read something, or whatever, then you don't get to talk about it, is the thing. You know, I mean, I guess you can give us a quick reason why you don't want to experience it, but I feel like you shouldn't judge a thing if you've never even experienced it. You know, regardless of what its reputation is, because you never know. If you did watch it, you might like it. I've had that experience before, where people in general all over the internet told me this is going to be shit and you're never going to enjoy this, and there have been times where I have enjoyed things where they said that I wouldn't. Just as there's been plenty of times where I haven't enjoyed things that people have told me that I would. Everyone's different that way. Yes, there are objective merits and flaws, but that's kind of a little bit of a separate issue. But hatedoms can get to the point where it's like you hate the show so much that you can't acknowledge. You are physically incapable of acknowledging anything it ever does right, which is complete and utter bullshit. You know, Sword Art Online is not the worst thing ever fucking made, okay? It's far from the worst anime made. It's far from the worst anime of the decade. It's not that bad, for fuck's sake. It has plenty of flaws, but it also has quite a few merits as well. But nobody likes to acknowledge those. Nobody ever likes to acknowledge when it does anything right, which it does. It's one of the reasons I hate talking about SAO, is because I can rarely find anyone to talk about it with, because you're either a 12-year-old weeboo who loves it to death because it's like the first anime you ever saw, or you're a fucking one of these Hatedom people. And like there's very little in between. And I hate being stuck in between like that. But there's also shows that have extremely negative reputations that people just don't understand the reasons for. And that's what really pisses me off, is when people create these artificial reasons for why something is terrible, even if it really isn't. You know, all those people who accused Fallout New Vegas of just being a map pack for Fallout 3, which is just complete bullshit. The only things in common it has is that it uses the same basic engine, the same basic system, and a lot of the same assets. But as a game, as far as its mechanics and stats and all the numbers, those were all tweaked and completely changed in some cases. There are certain systems in New Vegas that just do not work the same way they did in 3. You know? And there's way more improvements and enhancements and features, not to mention that its plot is completely isolated from 3. Or rather, I should say that 3's plot was completely isolated from the rest of the series, because New Vegas is more the true sequel to Fallout 2 than 3 ever was. Which isn't to say that I don't like 3, it's just that people seem to have gotten into... and that kind of went away after a while, as people actually got around to playing New Vegas. But there are situations like that where there's like these artificial reasons based on ignorance of why something should be disliked. And I basically just don't like it when people try to force their views on other people, and they try to include them in this mindless hatedom that teaches you that you should despise something without ever experiencing it, as if experiencing it itself would taint you somehow. It's almost fucking Puritan of them, the way some of these hatedoms operate. And since I'm only about halfway through the episode, I might as well elaborate on some of my thoughts on SAO specifically. My main problems with Sword Art Online are in its first arc, which I think has one of the worst rushed romances of all time, terrible pacing, which the terrible pacing is mostly the result of them trying to cram all the side stories in chronologically. Because the thing is, the book, the actual volume 1 of the series, the original novel, it doesn't have great pacing, but it had much better pacing. What happened was that volumes 2, and I believe volume 8 as well, are all side stories that take place in that same time frame, and the anime decided it would be prudent of them to adapt those chronologically, and that move completely destroyed the pacing, you know. Not to mention all the missed opportunities they had with the setting provided. So, yeah. But, unlike a lot of people, I actually think it got better. We're talking about the first season here. It actually got better in its second half. You know, many people hate the fairy dance arc, but I think it has, honestly, more merits than it does flaws. You know, the heroine in that case, Suguha, went through an actual character arc, and so many people misunderstand. The character arc was not about wanting to bang her cousin, okay? The character arc was about getting over Kirito and not being able to. That was the source of drama. So many people just saw another Emoto when it really was not the case at all. In fact, it was defying that. And people were so stupid and biased they didn't even realize what it was doing. And this is what hatedoms do. They force you to not look at the show critically, and they force you to take in all the biases and only see the exaggerated worst elements of a show, even if they aren't even there in the fucking first place. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. So the fairy dance arc I actually liked better because it had better pacing. It went from point A to point B in a logical sequence of events. You know, it felt like a cohesive plot, unlike the first arc, which was all over the fucking map. And unlike a lot of people, I actually did not mind Sugo as a villain, because he was supposed to be so stupid and over the top. That was kind of the whole point. And as far as being deliciously cheesy at it, he was ridiculously entertaining to watch. It's not masterpiece villain writing or anything, but he was just fun to watch because of how stupidly evil he was. And, you know, like, I honestly believe that the Fairy Dance arc was an improvement. And the thing, I'm not going to talk about the second season because there are a lot of people who haven't seen it and it might spoil some things, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I will say this, is that SAO pretty much ended with the second arc. And everything after that was written kind of as an expansion pack to this thing that is tangentially referred to as a series. And over time, Kawahara's writing improves, you know, but at the same time, it becomes increasingly pointless, because SAO really isn't a series if you think about it logically. Like, it's just a set sequence of almost self-contained arcs, in a way. You know, with the only real caveat being that you should watch them in chronological order. But it's not really an overarching series in the same way that his other far superior work, Excel World, is. And that is composed of arcs too, but they're much more subtle, and they all work within the same realm of plot progression. I don't know. There's a term, but I don't know what it is at the moment. I could probably talk about Excel World another time and why I love that. The reasons why people hate that show are even worse. You know, that basically boils down to just not liking fat kids and Yuki Kaji hate and blah 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 blah. I actually went out and bought the first Excel World novel recently. Yen Press is putting those out now, and thank you, Yen Press, for doing that. You guys are the pioneers of bringing light novels over here. So yeah, while I don't think SAO is great, I do see its merits. It also has a shit ton of flaws, you know, which I didn't really go into a lot of detail in, but I'm running out of time. So basically, I'm just in the middle about it. Just like, it's a thing that exists that I can draw enjoyment out of, but objectively, critically, not that great. But again, I don't hate it with vitriol like some people do, you know. And, you know, there are tons of things that people told me that I would hate, that once I actually sat down and looked at with a critical eye, I realized there's a lot of merit to things that people generally hate. So the next time somebody tells you to hate something you've never experienced, maybe you should go see it for yourself. Really take it in and look at it critically, and who knows, you might just find merits for other people that didn't. And please don't spread hatred of things you've never seen. That's just shitty behavior. And that's it for this week. Zeke Freak out. Ciao ciao for now.